Okay. And the reason it's a good question because there can be legitimate reasons why things happen.
Yeah.
Right? And so, for instance, you're in a sailing race, right? In a sailboat. Sure. And the mast snaps in half. Now you don't win the race.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you didn't, the mast snapped.
Yeah.
What can you do about that? Or the horrible weather rolls in and you can't launch your aircraft, so you can't go on your mission.
Right.
Well, you can't control the weather, so, like, what's up? How could that? That's a reason. Or you get really sick, so you can't compete in a competition. That's a reason. You were sick. Or you do bad because you were sick, and it's a reason. Could be called. Now you could look at the situation and say, okay, if I'm going to take ownership of this, did I properly test the mast?
Sure.
Did I?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Did we have a ground-based plan for the operation in case the weather came in, we were going to take vehicles instead? Right?
Yeah.
That would work. If you get sick before the competition, maybe you ask yourself, were you resting properly? Were you eating properly going into the competition so you wouldn't get sick? You could address that, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you can still take ownership of things even if the initial reaction is like, oh, well, you can't control that. Well, you can influence it. You could mitigate it, right? Now, can there still be legitimate reasons? Yes, there can. And for me, the difference, the line between an excuse and a reason is a reason you have zero control over. Right? You just have zero control over something happening. Well, that's a reason. Did I tell you I was almost late the other day for something?
No.
Because this is borderline.
Uh-huh.
I had an appointment at 10 o'clock. I left. It was a 20-minute drive.
Mm-hmm.
I left an hour. I left about 9:10. I left 50 minutes to drive 20 minutes.
Right.
Just so going to make it on time.
Yeah.
I get on the road, basically a couple roads out of my house, and the one entryway to get on the freeway is locked down.
Like incident, like isolate some incident went on.
A guy trying to kill himself
on
a bridge.
Yeah.
Shut the road down.
Incident, yeah.
So no one's going on the highway. So what is it? Everyone's being channelized into marginal, what are they called? Back side streets.
Yeah.
Detours, rerouted.
Yeah.
The clock is ticking. And I made it, right? I was 4 minutes. I had 4 minutes to spare. So instead of it taking 20 minutes, it took 46 minutes. It took more than twice as long. That could be, a fairly legitimate reason. Now, luckily, I always, I had planned that there could be something out of my control. It might take even longer. And that's why I leave early to go to an appointment or a situation like that. So I could have also checked the traffic prior to leaving and taken a completely different route. That would have been, I blame myself. So even in that situation, I was thinking the whole time, why didn't I check the traffic before I left? I knew this could have happened. So anyways, in my opinion, an excuse is when you blame something that you could have controlled. And a reason is something that you have absolutely no control over whatsoever. You think like a legit disease. I mean, sometimes people you can't control that. It happens. But I think this is the important part, I think that what you will find, especially when you approach the world with an attitude of extreme ownership, and that's that you're not going to make any excuses, you're not going to blame anyone else, is that you actually have a lot more control over things than you think you do. We've talked about this before. When I go to the airport, I get there really early because it's something that you have no control over. You're going to stand in that TSA line and those people are going to take forever, and that's the way it is. And if you want to get mad at them, it doesn't matter. You cannot control it in any way. You can stand at the back and my flight's leaving in 30 minutes. And they'll be like, whatever. You should have showed up earlier.
Yeah.
You can't control it. So in those situations, how do you control it? You show up early. You take ownership of it. You show up early. You don't just, I don't know what happened. The traffic was bad. I mean, there's a million excuses you can give. If you get that attitude where you're not going to make excuses, you'll actually take ownership of the things, and then you'll actually solve problems before they even happen. If I'm going to an appointment and I have the excuse in my back of my head that, you know what, if I'm late, I'll just say it was the traffic. Yeah. I have a much more increased chance of being late.
Yeah.
All right. So that's one of the things that makes extreme ownership hard is it hurts your ego. It hurts your ego. It hurts your ego to admit that you have control over things that went wrong. It's your fault. That hurts your ego.
Yeah.
It's also effective because of that. It's effective because you solve problems, like I said, before they even happen. You solve them because you take ownership of them. Well, that's what this whole conversation. Yes, right. It is about semantics. And the semantics are, for me, an excuse is something that you could have controlled, and a reason is something that you could not control.
So the other day, me and my girl watched this animal show. And this fawn was being born out in the wild. When the fawn came out, my girl was like, oh, look at that. It looks like Bambi. I was like, that motherfucker's fucked. This thing's going to be hunted. It looked all exposed and fragile. It made me think about myself growing up. The only thing different about that fawn and me is that fawn couldn't hide. And I thought I could. I struggled in class, so I picked the far back desk to sit in, hoping I never get caught on. I got exposed. When I was in the military, I was afraid of water. I got exposed in that. A lot of us are trying to find that back seat in the classroom of life, hoping we never get called on. Trust me, you will get called on. Your fears will always find you. They'll know what you're hiding. Stay hard. Maybe you were a victim of being called fat growing up. Folks make fun of you and shit. Maybe you weren't the smartest motherfucker in school. And people get mad at you for that shit. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's great power in adversity. If you're a victim of any kind, make sure you use that shit to become successful. Don't look for revenge. Look for the fucking reckoning. And I guarantee you, all those people who fuck with you growing up, you might just be their boss. They'll come looking for a fucking favor. And when they do, you got an option to say okay, or do what I do and say go fuck yourself. Ha! Beware of one thing, motherfuckers. Spitting in the wind. That shit comes back in your face. Stay hard.